Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're calling in. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Berman. I'm the CEO of American Society of University of Haifa. Although our physical campus is closed, the university is still holding classes and serving the majority of our 18,000 students. We are firmly committed to the development of our future leaders and to serving as the catalyst of growth and development for the entire North. While we face new challenges in this current climate, our mission has never been more critical. I'm delighted to be joined today with our special guest, University of Haifa President Ron Robin. Ron is with us today to speak about his role in the collective Israeli university's response to COVID-19 and how the university is navigating the crisis for our students and faculty and really the entire community in the North. Good evening, Ron.
Oh, good evening. What a strange way of meeting. I don't think we've ever done this before.
We haven't. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't we just start off, it was really, you and I were talking, I'm looking at the calendar and it was literally about a month ago, like late February, we were debating whether or not you should cancel a trip to the United States that was scheduled here for the first week of March. Things certainly have changed rapidly. Maybe just bring everyone up to speed, and I know we've been reading a lot in the news, but tell us a little bit about kind of the evolution of the impact of COVID in the academic community and the universities and how it responded, particularly the insider perspective that you have as in your role as head of VERA, which is the Association of Israeli University Presidents.
It feels like it was a year ago. It was basically a month ago when we were actually, as you just said, debating, should I come, shouldn't I come? And then all of a sudden, in a sort of like breathtaking speed, everything changed, almost like overnight. We started taking, government forced us basically to close down any large gatherings over 1,000 people. We had a bunch of events on campus that we canceled. Swiftly, before I could even look around, they started limiting classes to 200. And then almost overnight, they told us to shut down. And here is the most, and by the way, this happened with all the universities, not only with Haifa. And here is the most amazing part of this. We were ready for this shutdown. We'd been probably mentally prepared for this a long time in advance. And within 2 days, we were up and running an online university. It's hard to believe. Within 2 days, we were delivering something like 500 courses a day, seamlessly. Every now and again, a problem with somebody's internet at home or the professor, but we were up to 95% success and 100% attendance. I got to tell you this story that I've repeated time and time again, but I just love it, so I'm going to repeat it again. So one of our professors comes to us and he says, my courses have been going so well. There's been 100% attendance at my courses. And the last course I took, I looked at the attendance, the number of people who were there, and I saw it wasn't 100%. It was 120%. What happened is that it was an art history course. What happened, of course, is that people at home, their partners, their spouses, their kids became bored and joined the course. This is the sort of thing that's been happening, and it's happened time and time again. I'll maybe just say a few words about my role, as I do coordinate the university presidents. It's a role I've had now for about a year and a half. I was kind of in the eye of the storm, negotiating with government who should be furloughed, who shouldn't be furloughed, and persuading them that we should definitely keep all professors on the payroll, as there were 300,000 students whose lives were at stake. Whose future was at stake, to say, rather than their lives. And so we managed to persuade government to allow us to keep about 30% of our staff and 100% of our faculty. And that's the way we've been living from then up to about now. It's been surrealistic. I guess that's the best way of describing it.
What do you think you mentioned a few of them, but tell us a little bit about the greatest challenges that you've seen, some of the opportunities. How has the feedback been changing? It's been a couple weeks now that we've been online. So what's new and different?
So I'm going to say, it's a cliche, but like every cliche, there's a lot of truth to it. every crisis is an opportunity. And this has been quite an opportunity, I think, to see how we can expand our footprint as a university using online education. As you all know, we have ambitions to be the University of the North, not only of Haifa, but the University of the entire Galilee, the entire North. And one way of doing it is using in a judicious manner online education. Online education cannot eclipse regular education. It can fill in a gap by allowing us to deliver certain courses, large courses, let's say, for example, online and extend our reach. But, you know, creativity happens when people look at each other in the eye and they're in the same room. But I do think what is going to happen in the future, from a pedagogical standpoint, about a third of our curriculum will probably be delivered online. And that will be a huge, huge change. It's like a sea change as far as we're concerned. Look, our students were ready for this from day one. They'd been born with the technology. It was the professors who had to make the leap, and I would say they did it pretty simply. I think the other big challenge is trying to figure out what our university, how do we remain a relevant university given this crisis? This is a huge crisis. You know, we've been living for more or less 100 years with an uneasy truce with viruses. Since the Spanish flu pandemic, there's been kind of, you know, outbreaks here and there, but there's been this uneasy truce. It's over now. We have to figure out how we run our lives with pandemics and other major health incidents. And that, I think, is going to be one of the big challenges of the university, expanding our health sciences in a manner that we become useful contributors to a new type of life. And so I think that's one thing. The other thing that's quite obvious, that there's the next crisis on the way. It's going to be an environmental crisis. It's not far away. How do we as a university address the environmental crisis? We mostly focus on the sea, but that's not the only issue, of course. There are other issues that we'll have to focus on. And then there's an economic crisis. We're going to be going through a huge economic crisis, and the way we deal with this through our economic department, let's say, where we have a very strong group of people who do behavioral economics, I think is going to be very relevant. And finally, and most importantly, we have a political crisis. And how do universities deal with it? I think it's fair to say that all over the Western world, there's a political crisis. If you want, I can expand on this later, but universities are going to have to address this too. So all those sort of areas will keep us as a relevant university as we move forward.
So I do want to come back to all of those, but I just, before we do that, looks like you're at home, but yesterday I saw you in your office, which I probably shouldn't, you know, be saying out loud given the restrictions in Israel. But tell us, like, what is going on campus, and you know, is there anything we can do? A big topic in the United States is, you know, university students that have been kind of forced out, and what kind of safety net is for them. So maybe if you could give us here just a quick update on what type of resources do we have for, you know, our students. Are you know, for those who know the university, even if not physically, they know we have a big population of students who come from, you know, more remote communities or disadvantaged backgrounds. And you know, while that's not necessarily the primary mission, it's a big part of who we are. So how are we helping these students, and what do we need to do?
So as you know, we've always prided ourselves as being a university that is part of this huge effort to expand Israel's middle class and to be embracive of all the groups in Israeli societies, Arabs, Jews, people come from modest backgrounds. And of course, our students, who are mostly first-generation students, have been hit very heavily by this crisis. Most of them had these casual employment opportunities as waiters or you know, delivering food or things like that. Obviously, those jobs are gone. Most of them come from families that have been heavily hit by this crisis as well. And most have gone home. So the dorms are pretty much empty at this point. The only people left in the dorms are those who don't have homes that they can return to, and international students. We have about 250 international students who are still studying, still doing their coursework, but are sort of, you know, in this golden cage. They're in the dorms, we take care of them, but they can't really leave the dorms. And I think our biggest crisis right now is making sure that our students don't drop out for financial reasons. That seems to me to be our biggest concern right now. And, we are busily organizing funds to make sure that our students can survive this particular period, which is not going to be easy. We're supplying our students, those who don't have it, with laptops and with opportunities in areas where there's very poor internet reception, with alternatives to that, because as you said, many of our students come from quite a remote areas. So it's been an uphill battle, but I think we're winning it right now.
Great. So let's go back a little bit to what you were saying, sort of looking towards the future and the role universities can play. Just earlier this year, and as you said, in these days, it feels like every day is a month or a week.
Yeah.
We'll start talking about COVID years, like we talk about dog years, I guess. We had launched a significant growth plan, or I guess it was more than a year ago, but in the middle of expanding both of our physical presence and our overall academic reach. And those expansions were really based on, our history and our current areas of expertise. What areas do you think we're going to modify? Where do you think we're going to kind of press the pedal down even harder?
So there's no doubt that we hit the jackpot with the Laurier-Lockheed campus. There's no doubt about that. This is our downtown campus in the port, the city campus. And I think we made a very smart move. As you may know, this is going to be our data science campus, and it's adjacent to the largest hospital in the north, and it's adjacent to large high-tech areas. Everything that we do in the future is going to be based on big data. So by moving down our computer science, our data management, and our statistics to this area, which is alive and kicking even as we speak, I think was a phenomenal move. And obviously we're moving ahead with construction then, perhaps not at the pace that we hope to do, but we're absolutely moving forward there. And this will serve anything that has to do with personalized medicine, anything that has to do with epidemiology, that will help us there as well. Anything that has to do with public health will be based on big data. And so that expansion is very important. As far as our expansion into the Northeast, I think I said this a little earlier on, and I'll just mention it again. I think having these online capacities right now will allow us to expand into areas without having necessarily a physical presence, but having an online presence. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to hasten our move into the North and get us to establish a presence in the towns up north, first using online capacities, but then moving also finally to a physical presence there as well. So there's no doubt that our health sciences will move forward. Anything that has to do with big data will move forward. And of course, anything that has to do with environmental issues, beginning with the sea, marine sciences, but moving onto land as well. So I'm pretty sure that's where we're heading right now.
Okay, well, all this sounds very easy and to implement. So yeah, I'm just kidding. I want to go back to something you had said earlier when we were talking about just kind of future impact and looking at where we are now. You had mentioned, economic, but something that you had mentioned was and political, and what's the role of universities in that? And drawing not just on your experience of president of University of Haifa, and what we've talked a little bit about the North and how important we are to that region, but even some of the work you had done prior to that, at NYU, which obviously had a large international, your own work had a large international component. As kind of the world, and particularly, Israel, as that being our concern, looks to come out of this, what do you think is not just the role universities should play, but even our obligation and the things we need to consider?
So, universities, well, here's the big dilemma. Where is the world going to be heading right now? Will we be ensconcing ourselves within national boundaries? Will this be the end of globalization? Or actually, will this be an impetus for global collaboration? I think, and this has always been the case with universities, that we always work on global collaborative initiatives. I don't think the world can handle some of the challenges that are ahead of us without some sort of global collaboration, and universities will play an instrumental role in keeping us together, working on problem solving across countries, across national borders. The alternative is terrible, is to close ourselves in national borders and try and deal with problems locally without the knowledge that comes from expanding our reach and expanding our collaboration. So that's one issue I think that's extremely important. I want to go back and say a few words about how the universities will play a role in this huge political crisis that the Western world is going through. And it will play a twofold role. First of all, I think it's fair to say that there's a decline of the political class in the Western world. We've been seeing this over years. I don't think it's nostalgia when we say once upon a time, people who were attracted to politics had great leadership qualities, not all of them, of course, but a serious group of people did. And I'm not quite sure that's the case right now. Many people are disengaged from politics, are disillusioned by politics. And it's really the role of the university to resuscitate the liberal spirit, the liberal ethos, and to make sure that it somehow comes out of this crisis alive and kicking. Because without that, we will be at the mercy of other types of regimes, which I shudder to think how they will shape the face of the global politics in the future. So I look around us at countries that are going to implode because of this crisis as the virus spreads. And those are usually countries that don't have a backbone of civil servants and the middle class. And that's the role of universities, is providing a robust middle class and producing civil servants who can help us move through crises like the one we have right now and some that we might have in the future.
Thank you. And I just want to note, just in case everyone forgets, not that I'm here promoting your books, but Ron does have a background in Cold War history and actually a lot of university dynamics. So just throwing that qualification out there, and we'll do your book tour for a future webinar. Tell us a little bit about what you see as the difference in how the reaction, both on a university level and just on a country level from Israel and, the US, where most of our callers are from, listeners, but even other countries. And maybe that has to do with the Israeli political system or the size of the country, but just what have you been hearing from your colleagues around the world?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody who's on this call. It's not a given that you're actually here on this call, given the fact that each and every one of the people on this call faces a whole series of issues. If you're in New York or anywhere else in the United States, for that matter, you're just about to reach an apex, and I can understand how difficult it is. It's really interesting to look at the way Israel is handling this. It's handling it in a very disputatious fashion, but at the same time, in a very orderly fashion. So it's still two aspects of Israeli society which I think come to play. We're constantly arguing over the right measures to be taken, but at the same time, we do seem to be following judicious rules and handling the crisis quite well. Every death is a tragedy, but the number of deaths is very low at this point, and it will probably remain low because people have been quite attentive to the guidelines coming out of public health officials. But at the same time, every time you open the television, people are screaming at each other. Actually, basically making sense because there are arguments to be made for different strategies. But once it's been settled, we have followed a path which I think will lead us out of this crisis pretty soon. I think after Pesach, we'll probably see some sort of orderly return to work. Schools, I very much doubt it, or universities, I doubt that very much. But I believe that factories will start working again. I don't think office culture will ever be the same. I'm pretty sure about that. But we'll be getting back to some sort of orderly way of doing things. I think we've handled it well. I think this is a war. And in a war, you actually pay attention to those who know how to handle a war. And the role of the military and the role of Mossad has been instrumental in helping us deal with many of the aspects of this crisis. And at the same time, keeping a democracy alive and kicking has been paramount and has been part of the this give and take in Israeli society. How do you handle a crisis like this, which is existential, and at the same time keep your democratic society alive?
Just a quick note, in just a few minutes, we're going to open it up to questions. So for those of you who are on the Zoom, the video, you can go to the Q&A section and submit questions, or you can email them to info@asuh.org. So I should have pointed that out at the beginning, as I'm being told. Just to kind of get back to sort of an overall question for you, Ron, and we've, some of our community has been able to participate in other briefings we've had from some of the university experts in public health, and we have nursing coming up and a few others. But tell us a little bit about what is going on at the university right now, just to address the specific crisis. Well, obviously we understand the importance of strategic planning to avoid the next one, but can you tell us a little bit about some of what our students or professors are doing and how they're involved in what's happening right now?
So the people in our health professions are pretty much being mobilized for this effort. Those who study nursing or public health are all involved in the national effort. Many of our professors from departments like statistics and so on are tracking the COVID outbreak where it's most prevalent, where it seems to be dying down. And so we're all sort of linked to sort of like a nerve system which is run out of Tel Aviv. And many of our professors and students are involved in this. And it's quite moving to see our young students who haven't even finished their coursework now in the midst of this crisis as nurses and as other medical personnel involved in this. We have a whole array of medical, we have physicians on our faculty, a whole array of them. They're all back in the hospitals right now. And from anybody from social workers to psychologists to statisticians, we're all involved in this national effort right now. So quite exciting, actually.
And I know it's obviously too soon to tell, or things just keep changing. But in your conversations with faculty or the ones who are sort of overseeing or hearing feedback from their students who are in the field, are you beginning to hear about kind of either new areas of study or new ways, we want to be working with, perhaps our nurses or our psychology students, or kind of, in addition to just sort of the online changes, online in person, but, what else are we learning about how to better prepare for the future based on that?
I'm going to make two educated guesses, not wild guesses, but educated guesses, that healthcare professionals like nurses, for example, are going to be upgraded quite significantly. Mm-hmm. And many of the things that doctors do today will fall on the plate of nurses, I think, in the future. So the nurse practitioner, which is, quite part of the medical scene in the United States, we're already there as well. That's how we train our personnel right now. Will be upgraded even further. And we'll have to have the type of knowledge to deal with the flow of information, which is mostly through big data. So that's my second guess, that everything is moving to big data right now. And that professionals, health professionals in the future, will have to have the knowledge to decipher big data in making decisions about how to care for patients and to make these life-changing decisions, whether you send somebody to hospital, or you send them to home care, all those sort of things. People are going to have a knowledge that they don't have right now, and it's going to have to be part of their training in the future. I'm pretty sure about those two aspects. Big data is going to change the way we make decisions in every field, but definitely in health fields as well.
Good. I think, you've talked a little bit about academic collaborations and how that's been global. And I think, you're sort of in an interesting position for a lot of university presidents, because while your university, of course, is in Haifa, your working environment is much more international. And we see a lot of, even here in the US, even before this, much more of a closing of the borders, not on an academic scale, but in other ways as a reaction to all of this, and even how we're responding, where we're trying to get our supplies from. What do you see as that sort of dichotomy between academic and sharing knowledge and everything we need to address the crisis or to prevent the next one, and how societies are sort of reacting on their own to bring everything closer to home, to sort of almost take care of themselves, I guess.
I'm sure manufacturing will change. There's no doubt about it, but that change was in the cards. Anyway, when you think of the way 3D printing is moving today, one can think of manufacturing that is today sort of centered in places like China or Vietnam and other places, moving to robotics and moving to be more localized. But knowledge cannot be local. It's not possible. It's absolutely not possible. And if we make the terrible mistake of keeping knowledge ensconced in our own national borders, we will not be able to deal with the next crisis. The next crisis, and the way we handle this one too, is built on collaboration. The vaccine is not going to come out of some individual lab. It's going to come out of large collaborative efforts between industry, between universities, and among different national entities. That's the future. And universities have to keep that global collaborative spirit alive. The type of challenges we have in the future, no one country will be able to deal with it. There's no doubt about it.
So one of the questions we're getting from one of our participants, I'm going to rephrase it a little bit, just based on some of what we're seeing here, is we're beginning to see in the United States discussion of or analysis of the virus impacting different socioeconomic communities differently, much like Hurricane Katrina did. I was wondering, are you guys seeing that in Israel, and are we seeing that with our students? I mean, you talked a little bit about the ones in villages, having more difficulty with access. That's more about their classes. But are we hearing more about how the virus is impacting them, and
yeah,
the conversation in Israeli society about that?
So while we do suffer from a lack of data, we can see certain trends that are very, very prevalent, and I'm sure you've been reading about this in the newspaper. The Haredi society is going through a tremendous crisis right now. It began with a deep distrust of the state, and it now is a distrust of the leadership in the Haredi community, and I really don't know where this is going to end up. As about 30% of the people who are hospitalized right now are Haredim, and that's way beyond their percentage in the population. With Arabs, as far as we can see right now, so I should say about Haifa, first of all. This is a very important point. Haifa stabilized very early on and has the lowest percentage of people carrying the virus per 1,000 citizens. So Haifa
It's good that we never got any tourists.
There you go. But people in Haifa just are a different breed of people. They pay attention and they listen and they make educated decisions. And I think this has a lot to do with it. Right. Arab society so far has not been hit that hard. We're extremely worried about the impending Ramadan, where people meet for large meals and there are holidays at the beginning and holidays at the end and gatherings at nighttime. This will be the huge test for Arab society in Israel as we move on. This is a month-long event, as you know, and that will be a huge test for them in the future. But what I think this will do is it'll, as we said, a crisis is an opportunity. And I think this will bring us closer together as we realize that when something like this hits blindly at society, doesn't differentiate between rich and poor, between religious and secular, between Arab and Jew, the only way to combat something like this is coming together. It's not easy. It breaks certain prejudices that we all have. We all have prejudices, and we have to get rid of them in order to combat this. So a university like us, which is a tapestry of Israeli society, is a particularly interesting place to see the way that we interact among ourselves in trying to find a path out of this crisis.
I know some of the response at the university has been sort of government mandated, but how much are you in contact with your colleagues at the other universities, the presidents, in terms of changes or cooperation or actions you guys? Not that you were a competitive bunch beforehand, but has this sort of changed the relationship and the way you all work together?
Well, it's changed it, first of all, through proximity. We meet virtually, of course, not in person, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And we have these meetings where we try to coordinate responses to, let's say, the crisis, the economic crisis among students is a good example. The way we deal with online education so that we won't knock each other off the air and that we each have space in the cloud. And the way we handle our exams, we're hit in the middle of an exam period and we're trying to figure out ways. And of course, the criteria that we're going to use for next year's students. How in the world are we going to make admission decisions given the fact that many people won't have the equivalent of an SAT, will only have their matriculation, their Bagrut. How in the world do we make decisions that we can actually share among universities? So it's drawn us actually quite close together, the different university presidents. It's drawn us together. We also lobby government, as you can imagine, as a group. Were we to lobby government as individuals, I think we'd have a big problem. And we make sure that we lobby as a group and we take care of our students and our faculty. And this is the future of the country. There are 300,000 students in the universities and colleges right now. We have to make sure they graduate with an education. Otherwise, this crisis will just take a terrible turn.
You brought up an interesting point that we've actually had questions from some of our supporters about. How are admissions, university admissions, going to be determined? What's the status of what in Israel, for those of you who don't know, is the Bagrut exams and psychometric and different types of things that are used to evaluate students. And this is actually a huge conversation here in the United States. And on a personal note, I have a son who's a junior, but there's talk of, are colleges even going to look at standardized testing, next year? And again, in the United States, it's a much bigger pool of universities. So there's never one decision, but is there sort of a time frame where you as the universities feel we need to make this decision and communicate it? I'm not trying to ask you to reveal insider information. I'd imagine, the parents there are a lot like the parents here and the students there. There's got to be a lot of angst about this, or just as there is about everything in the future. But
at the end of Pesach, towards the end of April, we have to make decisions. And it looks like that we're going to have multiple entry points into the university. There's some people who have all their psychometric and Bagrut, and they can enter the usual way. Others won't. And we'll have to do individualized exams. And we're also going to offer in the summer online courses. And if students manage to pass the online courses, then they can enter as full-fledged students as well. So we're going to have multiple entry points into the university. Next year, we're going to have to improvise. We're going to have to come up with new ways we're going to have to delegate authority to local departments to make decisions on their own. It's not going to be an easy thing, but we cannot rely solely on standardized tests. That's pretty sure by now.
Right. I want to be conscious of your time and everyone else's, and I know we've covered a wide range of topics, and that also, you know, next week or in 2 weeks, half the answers might not change dramatically, but will at least evolve. But
Right.
I mean, tell me, or tell us what else would you want us to know? You know, either it's your non-Israeli supporters or community or the American community. I mean, you know, what are the other important things for us to know about University of Haifa and the students and the overall region and climate as we're sitting here, you know, now and certainly very aware of what's going on around us, but also worried about what about you and our students and everyone else? What are some things we should be thinking about?
So, you know, we're in the north of the country where it's fair to say this is Israel's last frontier. The government has had huge development plans for the south. The center of the country doesn't need government help really to develop, and it's now the north's turn. And it's very important for us to make sure that our students succeed and become part of this huge effort to revitalize the north of the country and to bring it into the fold. This is the last area that seems to have not developed in the manner that the rest of the country has developed. And our students, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, come from modest background. And so what we would like to make sure that none of them drop out for financial reasons and that none of them drop out for academic reasons. So we have online academic help, and health, by the way. We provide emotional support for our students right now. And we have to make sure that they don't drop out for financial reasons. And that's our major effort right now. And anyone who can be of assistance, we are going to offer our students grants between $1,000 to let's say $3,000 to keep their head above water. And they will pay it back once they get into society and find their sea legs and find a job. They will pay it back so that the next generation of students can enjoy the benefit of financial assistance as they move forward. And this is also, I think this is an important lesson for our students to learn. We're willing to help them with the assumption that they will help others once they're in that position. And that's what we're trying to do right now, is to collect enough funds to help approximately 5,000 students. That's my estimate right now. Will be needing our help over the next few months, our economic help, so that they can remain students, full-fledged students in the university. This is the future of the country. Expanding the middle class is what we do, and this is the future of our country. And anyway, anybody in this call can assist we would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. I think, look, we appreciate it, and it's good to see you and everyone. And I think, you know, in this time where we're so bombarded by news from all different sources, and it's so certainly frightening and disconcerting, but also some of it very sensationalized.
Right.
It's very comforting for us to know that despite the immediate needs that we have and that are quite unexpected and urgent, you know, that our long-term mission is still more relevant than ever, will be needed more than ever. You know, we are going to be the ones that, you know, everyone's going to literally and figuratively look to up north to pull Israel and Haifa out of this. So we appreciate you taking some time to explain it all to us. If anyone has additional questions, feel free to email them to us at info@asuh.org, and we'll pass them on to Ron and get you some answers back, or one of us can even call you. It's a very unusual holiday this year for everyone. Passover or Easter or your upcoming Ramadan, but you know, we all, on behalf of all of us at the university, we wish you and your families nothing but health and safety and peace, and look forward to connecting again soon. And we'll be back in touch with our next update schedule. So thank you
for taking the time to join. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.